Greetings, salutations, and well wishes. Welcome to another episode of The Beat. I'm your host, Ashley Anthony, signing in from the campus of Worcester State University. Joining me today is one very special guest, a product of Central Massachusetts. This business-minded individual is not only the creator of an ingenious phone application, the CEO of said application, and a trained tech solution specialist, he is also a motivational speaker who regularly helps young people with career pursuits in general, while promoting the benefits of entrepreneurship in particular. I'm referring to Worcester State University alum, Derek Canton. Having been profiled multiple times in the Worcester Business Journal, Derek has the distinction of winning the International Money 2020 Hackathon financial tech competition, earning first prize in Worcester State University's first annual Next Big Idea contest, receiving the Kern Family Foundation Award for church and community-based entrepreneurship, and being accepted into the Chicago-based Future Founders Fellowship Program. Thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Good, I'm excited to be here. It's always awesome being here at Worcester State University, so it's a pleasure.
Oh, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Can you briefly describe your upbringing, and while doing so, tell us who or what first sparked your love of entrepreneurship in general, and computer tech-based entrepreneurship in particular?
Yeah, so there were a couple things. So one is I always like to start with a fun fact. So I'm a middle child, and I was born here in Worcester at the old St. Vincent's Hospital. I was a cheap baby. My parents were given $100 to leave the hospital a day early. So that was kind of me just showing up into the world. So growing up as a middle child, absolutely very competitive, and had multiple kind of experiences doing projects, right? So the first kind of real project I did was out of my home church. My home church, I was there when we were about 45 people, grew to about 2,000 people, and I got to see a lot of the ins and outs of that. And so during that time, I did projects like building their bookstore, and one of the things that I asked my coach and mentor at the time, I said, well, why don't we have an app for our home church? And ended up building this app, which I absolutely fell in love with, and became kind of my first real technology project, became a really strong outreach tool for our church and community. And so that kind of sparked this passion of entrepreneurship. And then coming to Worcester State University, the Next Big Idea competition were just kind of seeds that were planted. But surrounding myself with other mentors and individuals who have been successful in this space has really inspired me, and something I always try to do on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you gave us a little sneak peek into your personal mission, but can you tell us more about what your personal mission is as a strategist and creator of computer tech solutions exactly?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when I think about what I'm truly passionate about, right, what gets me excited and why I do what I do, there's kind of a couple things. So one is, my true north has always been around people, right? Every single project I've done has something that has a huge impact on providing better customer or human experiences. And so whether it's building an app for my church or doing my first clothing company that we did, there was always a people-centric mission behind that. And even kind of what we're doing now in the payment space, it's all really around providing better frictionless experiences, right? And we kind of joke about this, my team and I, but the whole idea was around how do you make the best payment experience? And I'm like, well, the best payment experience is one where you never have to pay, right? And it was a joke, but that was really the whole inception around it. And so for me, my mission and really the things that drives me is how do we create the best experiences for humans?
Okay. Among your most recent creations is the PaerPay smartphone application. Can you please describe what it does exactly?
Yeah, so with PaerPay, we wanted to focus on making payments as simple and frictionless as possible. We wanted to make it so that you could walk into a restaurant, sit down and eat, and just get up and walk away, right? Almost like an Uber-like experience, right? You call an Uber, you jump in the Uber, and then when you're done, you just get out and they charge you, right? And so the thought was, okay, well, can we bring this technology into the restaurant space, and what does that look like? And so that's exactly what we're doing. So we make it that you never have to wait to pay your bill at a restaurant again.
So quick, easy, and no hassle. Mm-hmm. That's how most people like it.
Absolutely.
So can you also tell us what exactly inspired you to produce it?
October 2016, I went to compete in this hackathon called Money 2020, which is the world's largest financial technology hackathon. It's a little bit of a funny story. I didn't have a ticket for the hackathon. I literally slept on the floor in the Venetian, so I didn't stay in a hotel, and I literally snuck into the hackathon to compete. But I just had conviction that I needed to be there. And when I was looking at this whole idea of the hackathon is you build an app in 24 hours, right? And so the whole idea was around payments. I'm like, okay, well, what can we do? It's around the payment space. And I was originally working on another app idea in the food sector, but we said, okay, instead of tackling 80% of the stuff. Let's scrap that 80% and focus on the 20%, which was just the payment experiences. And so we ended up winning the hackathon, which was an incredible experience. And that was kind of the inception of the idea, and then spent about 8 months getting validation on the idea and then putting together the business.
Oh, wow, that sounds really interesting. What sets PaerPay apart from similar apps? Because there's plenty of apps already out there on the market.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One, for us, we're focusing really on that payment experience, right? So that whether it's you have to download an app or you can just use your phone without it, right? Simple, frictionless experiences is really our key focus, right? For us, we do itemized splitting. So for example, question we get a lot is, what makes you different than a Venmo, right? So you go out to eat with your friends, someone still has to put down a credit card, and then there's this whole infamous game of, okay, everyone Venmo me, right? And someone's like, yeah, well, my food was $20, so they send you $20. And you're like, well, what about the tax and what about the tip? And then you end up getting lost on this money, and it's frustrating for you. And then from the customer side of things, right, we're turning over tables faster, we're making customers happy, we're bringing new customers in the door, right? And so there's some really cool driving differentiators with us, but because we're focused on the payment experience, it really sets us apart. We've seen some players in the space who are trying to do everything from ordering to delivery to loyalty, but I think having payments and getting the payments thing right is the first approach to really solving that problem.
So it sounds like people is the major part of your PaerPay experience.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly made you want to focus on making sure the customer got the most out of that?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing, right? If people don't like it, they're not going to use it, right? I mean, that's really the easiest way to look at it. But also, we wanted to make sure that we built a product that was customer-centric first, right? I've known people and seen companies who have raised a ton of money, built something, and then realized that there's no market fit for it. No one wants it. The product is, it's just wrong timing, right? And there's tons of stories. I mean, like the Google Glass, for example, really cool product, but there's no product market fit for that. So making sure that we align with customers early and intentionally helps us kind of fuel some of our early success.
Okay. For the non-tech savvy members of our viewing audience, what are the primary steps involved in producing such an app, and how long does the process normally take?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I'm actually not technical. I don't write code or anything like this, right? And so kind of my journey as an entrepreneur was, how do you run a technology company when you don't know how to actually write code, right? But I've always been a techie, so growing up, playing with computers, and I'm a big Apple nerd, like all that stuff, and we can talk tech all day long, but if you said, hey, go build an app by yourself, I would fail at that immediately, right? And so that was a challenge that I had to figure out is, okay, how do I actually build a technology company without having, any technical background? And there's a couple things I tell people. One is being a storyteller and an incredible storyteller makes a huge difference. And what I mean by that is the ability to not only cast a vision, communicate vision, and then get people to execute on a vision is critical for running a business. Because I, in reality, can't do everything, right? I know what I do really, really well, and so I'll just staff for my weaknesses. So when I got out the gate, I was like, okay, who can I find that has the technology background that can help me, who can coach me, who can bring in the skill sets that I don't have to be able to actually put us in a stronger position, right? And even if I did have the technical skill sets, we're dealing with payments and compliance and security, right? So if I ever messed up your credit card data, like you would not be happy about that, right? You know what I mean? So we need to find people who had experience in years of dealing with payments and compliance. And so that's exactly what I did, right? And so I told the story around a product, right? I casted a clear vision and a roadmap of how we can get there. And then I did it in a way that they could really capture that vision and want to be a part of that journey.
Okay. So that really gives hope to someone who's not as tech savvy as everyone else, that they can still achieve the same accomplishments while not having the skills that they see everyone else having.
Yep, absolutely. I tell people all the time is play to your strengths, right? Because again, if I tried, I remember it's kind of funny, when we first got started, I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll just build it myself. I'll teach myself how to write code. And I really had this revelation of like, this is not the best use of my time, right? And so what I do well is, product design. So I design the product, I can architect it, or I can tell you how the technology works. I can do the pitch deck, I can design it, I can sell it, I can raise money, but I just physically can't build it. And so I'm like, I'm gonna do these things really, really well, and then find someone who can do that last component and just crush it, and that's what we did.
Oh. Team always makes everything happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's this whole proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, and that's how we started, but when you really want to go far, you have to go together, and that's where we're at now.
So in addition to PaerPay, you're also involved with a number of other projects and business ventures. Briefly describe one or two others that you find exceptionally unique or exciting.
I'm working on a handful of projects with a couple other people in different areas. So one is, I do a lot of volunteer work. So I sit on the board at Framingham State University. And so we do a lot of work with their students there, helping them promote entrepreneurship. And so it's always cool seeing people who were where I was, right, and then coaching them through that process. Second thing I'm part of is the Future Founders Fellowship Program. They take everyone, you have to be 18 to 30 years old, and they have people as early as just an idea to as late as, raising a few $1 million in funding to scale and grow a business, right? And so we're kind of in the middle of that, where we have a product, we've raised some money, we have a team, and so now we're looking to grow. So I get to kind of coach down to the people who are just at the idea phase, and I get to look up and learn from the people who are kind of further ahead. So that's it's a really, really kind of cool sector to be in and see what people else are working on. But I think if I had to pick like a specific project that kind of like as of recently, I've had a lot of fun, kind of playing around with this. So one of my friends down in the Future Founders program is working on this education platform, helping students and the teachers have a better connection, right? Because the reality is there's not really enough time in the day to really get to know the students and their passions. And so I've been helping him recently of helping kind of tell a story, put together a team, get this product out there. They built the first iteration of it, but it's really cool to see the progress that he's making.
That's really nice that you guys are focusing on the teacher-student relationship, because I know that's a great foundation for helping a student really find where they're going.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you've been telling us a lot of fascinating things about the industry. What about technology solutions industry do you find most frustrating at times?
It's funny, I think that the thing that frustrates me the most also gives me the biggest edge, right? So I used to always discredit myself because I couldn't write code. All right, I would always say, okay, well, because I can't solve this problem the way everyone else solves this problem, I'm not good enough, right? But what I realized is because I don't have that kind of mindset or frame set, if you will, I look at problems differently, and thus I solve those problems a little bit differently, right? And so for us, like the couple of challenges I was running was, okay, well, how do you get off the ground, like when you have no idea where to start, like where do you start, right? And how do you communicate that information and that disconnect between technology and non-technical people, right? And what I realized is that, a lot of times you have people who are really talented at writing code, but struggle with the storytelling, the getting a product into market, getting user adoption, right? And on the other side of things, you have the creatives that are like, hey, well, we have this great idea, but we don't know actually how to physically build it, right? But if we had it, we could sell this thing, we could scale it, we could do these things, but there's that disconnect. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge is kind of getting those connector points in there. And then also, I think also the learning curves too, right? But I think those learning curves are also exciting because it's an opportunity to be able to expand your skill set, figure out what else you can learn and do, and just kind of have fun with it, right? So I think that if everything was just laid out, it'd be boring. I kind of like that mystery and the challenge that kind of comes with it. I think the biggest thing I always tell people is there's never a wrong answer, right? Everyone's path is different, and you just do what you do to figure it out.
So you're turning a setback into an opportunity.
Absolutely.
While engaging the public as a CEO, a public speaker, and a mentor, what common misconceptions about your line of work do you normally notice?
I love doing things like this where I get to speak and be on stage and pitch and get awards, right? It's super cool, and a lot of times people come up to me like, hey, how do I do what you're doing? I'm like, man, this is probably only like 5% of really what I do, right? It's the most public, but the thing I tell people is it's really just a hustle, right? And it's a grind. The reality is like I just outwork most people. I work long hours, right? Probably the majority of my life really isn't that glamorous, right? And it's just in the office, heads down, getting work done, being productive. And what I tell people, it's like running a business isn't necessarily hard, right? There's nothing that you can't figure out. It's just being consistent, right? And so, I've been working on this business now since October 2016, right? And we've been in business for a couple of years, kind of since then after funding the business. But it's been a few years of just steady improvement, grinding, right, getting this thing done. And so I always tell people like entrepreneurship is the most hardest, frustrating thing you can do. More likely than not, you're going to fail at it, but it's so rewarding, right? And I never would trade that for the world. But again, I think oftentimes entrepreneurship is very over glamorized. Of like, oh, this is a get rich quick scheme, and I want to do this, and I want to this and that, and then we're going to have all this money. It's going to be fantastic. And if I always want to just get rich quick, I'd probably go into like investment banking or something like that. So I think that's the biggest misconception is that the reality is it's work, and if you're not willing to put the work in, then it might not be for you.
So on the topic of work and the hard work you have to put in, what sage advice would you provide to a high school student or a college student with aspirations of doing what you do?
Yeah, so if you're a high school or college student or no matter where you are in life, right, even if you're later in life and you have some aspirations to do some similar stuff, I will tell you is just do what you love, right? It's simple, but the reality is I didn't set out to like, hey man, I'm just gonna start the business, I'm gonna do this huge thing or this and that. Literally how it started was just curiosity. And I'm like, well, how can I do more of this? Well, if I want to do more of this and I have these bills to pay, can I get paid to do what I love? That will cover my income so I can leave my full-time job and then do this, right? So it's really not super complex, right? And but one of the quotes I heard is that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success, right? The stuff that I'm doing now, I mean, I've been doing this same type of stuff for, since college, right? But now I'm at a larger scale, and now I'm getting recognized for the work that we're doing. But I mean, I still have a long way to go, but I love what I do, right? And so whether it's technology, whether it's sports, right, no matter what it may be, like, be intentional, carve time out to do that, and it's a muscle, right? If you don't work out the muscle, you're not going to get stronger at it.
It sounds like you're very good at time management.
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. But life's about balance, right? Because there's some days where literally I'll just like sleep in. I'll be like, hey, you know what, like. We'll grind and we'll have I'll work sometimes like 15, 20-hour days, right? Because we have a deadline, we have to hit it. But other days I'm like, okay, you know what, making sure I'm healthy is very important to me too, right? So finding the balance of being in the gym, making sure I eat right. There's a whole thing of just like sustainability that's really important because again, it's really a marathon and not a sprint, right? And so having that balance and understanding, when you need to pull those all-nighters and understanding where you're okay, no, I'm just gonna just binge Netflix all day. Having that balance is important because I totally will binge Netflix and just do that, right? And just kind of enjoy the balance.
Now I feel better about my Netflix addiction.
Yeah, again, right? It's all about balance. I mean, that's what it is.
Can you describe what you foresee yourself doing within and beyond the realm of computer technology 10 years from now?
Yeah, totally. So a couple things I really want to do is investing. So I want to be on the other side of the table. Coaching and mentoring, right? Because I want to be to other people what people were for me when I first got started, right? So I did the Next Big Idea competition, right? Robert O'Brien, he was the one who funded the idea competition. He was the one who picked the winners, the whole nine, right? It was his thing. And so being the first winner of the Next Big Idea competition, he funded my first business, he coached me, he mentored me, he, from managing a board to managing the financials, right? And in a lot of ways, I was terrible at it, but he saw something in me and said, hey, no, we're gonna work on this, and we're gonna coach you, and we're just gonna invest in you, right? And so I want to be able to do that for others and be able to get to a point where even just there's a group called Harlem Capital where they invest in Black and brown founders, and which is super empowering, and I want to be on that side of the table where I can be in a position to say, hey, you know what, you have a great idea, you have a challenge, let me coach you, let me mentor you, let me write you a check, right, and let's build this business in a way that's successful and sustainable, right? So 10 years from now, I'll totally be doing a lot more of that.
What grade would you give the city of Worcester for how it supports small businesses?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think there's a couple things. If I had to give it a grade, I'll give it a B. And be improving, right? I think there's a couple things. One is you have the kind of fast growth technology startups, right, like myself, but then you also have more lifestyle businesses as well too, right? And it's been really cool to see the initiative kind of locally from the universities to the different administrations, right, to see what the town is doing, to be able to invest locally, which is super optimistic, right? And so I think one of the things I'm super proud of is being an entrepreneur from the Worcester area, right, and being able to kind of give back and see where the opportunities are for improvement as well too. So the future is super bright for Worcester when we're talking about our technology, when we talk about entrepreneurship, when we talk about growing businesses, and so this is the right spot to be. I'll absolutely tell you that.
So I'm sure a lot of our viewers are very interested in your work. How can curious viewers and our prospective clients get in touch with you afterwards?
Yeah, so I always tell people I'm super responsive on LinkedIn. So Derek Canton, you can just find me on LinkedIn or on Facebook. If someone said, hey, I have an idea, I'm doing this thing, and I need help with funding, I need help with a business plan, I need help with whatever that may be, then I'm more than happy to point people in the right direction.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here at Worcester State University for this episode of The Beat. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and/or follow us on Twitter. Enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, or evening.